You are watching the New American Media. This is the New American Media. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. This is Brian Engelman here on thenewamericanmedia.com. This is Agree to Disagree. If you are not following us on Twitter, please do so. We're at American_media_. And if you're not subscribed to our YouTube page, youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia, please click subscribe and be sure to leave your comments below. We are joined once again with Blake the Eccentric Walley from FreedomizerRadio.com's Eccentric Perspective. I co-host with Blake on many of the Mondays and the occasional Wednesday and Thursday, so you can find Blake over there on FreedomizerRadio.com from noon to 1:30 p.m. Pacific at FreedomizerRadio.com, and he is on Twitter at Eccentric99. Blake, 3 more major U.S. banks report possible cyber attacks. Let me just touch on a couple of these stories real quick, and let's get an update. U.S. Bank and PNC reported problems with their customer websites Wednesday after a financial services security group warned about possible cyber attacks. Meanwhile, Security News Daily reported that on Tuesday, Wells Fargo may have also been the victim of a sophisticated campaign of distributed denial of service, DDoS, attacks. These reports follow last week's attacks, which affected J.P. Morgan Chase and Bank of America. U.S. Bank spokesman Tom Joyce told the Associated Press that some customers experienced intermittent delays. He said the bank was working to fix the problem and was working with law enforcement. Now that's the top of the story. It continues. This industry group raises its cyber threat level to high from elevated because of the potential cyber attacks. Senator Joe Lieberman, independent from Connecticut, told C-SPAN last week he believed Iran was behind the Chase and Bank of America attacks. So what you have here, national security officials told NBC News that the continuing bank cyber attacks last week were being carried out by the government of Iran. One of those sources said the claim by hackers that the attacks were prompted by the online video Innocence of the Muslims mocking the Prophet Muhammad was just a cover story. Okay, so you have this situation. You and I have talked about being prepared, having a bug-out bag, having some sort of vehicle that can get us around, or bikes or motorcycles, having some sort of bug-out location, just, in case of emergency, whether it's a fire, a flood, an attack, an earthquake, it doesn't matter. Just having contingency plans are generally a good idea. Have some extra water, have some extra food, have some tools, have your life in order. But we've talked about EMPs, electromagnetic pulses, either naturally through solar flares or whether a nuclear device is detonated in the atmosphere and it shuts down and fries all the electronics that could render us helpless. It doesn't even need to be that complicated. If all of the banking institutions were shut down at the same time, you could cause instant chaos by cyber attacks. Now, we've been following what's going on in Libya and Iran, and we had a very heated conversation about Benjamin Netanyahu on Eccentric Perspective a couple of days ago. I just find it very interesting that now all of this stuff is occurring and the fingers are being pointed directly at Iran. What are your thoughts off the top of your head?
Well, yeah, Lieberman's way up in the Israel lobby. I don't have any reason to trust him. Of course, it's Iran. I'm seeing a lot of major fear-mongering by Israel. They make me nervous more than anybody else. They're also, of course, we had the big speech by Netanyahu, the big controversial speech with the cartoon bomb. And then, of course, the most disturbing news story that I saw of this week on this subject was lobbyist Patrick Clausen, who actually got up, made a speech, and said, it went over all the different types of false flags that have happened and how that was used as a justification to preemptively strike Iran before they have a false flag or before something bad happens. And he talked about something about a submarine getting sunk in the Strait of Hormuz. It was pretty sick that he got caught on camera with that. I've seen several articles on this guy saying that. So I'm looking at it right now. There's another story out of Israel, and that is the headline: is Will Israel blow up something and falsely blame it on Iran? So it is making me nervous. I've likened Netanyahu to a younger, more ambitious Dick Cheney. There's a a lot of bad things with this guy. He's been, fear-mongering this Iran nuclear weapons program for over 20 years. And I think he's a very dangerous guy. And I don't like, with Lieberman and Clausen are getting into this mix, and they're the ones that seem to be, wanting to jump into a war. I don't think the rest of the world does. And over this, this insane idea that I think that Iran is somehow going to get a nuclear weapon and just immediately launch it at Israel or something like that. I think that's crazy. I don't think anybody would do that. It's a lot of fear mongering, and it could end up destroying the earth if we get into a World War III scenario. If there's a major war breaking out that will bring Russia and China into it, and then all bets are off. Anything goes. It'll be the worst war you can possibly imagine.
Well, I mentioned on our program the other day, I bring up a couple of additional points. One, that I read a series of quotes from Mahmoud Ahmadinejad where he's very antagonistic. He's very intent on destroying Israel and removing Israel and erasing them and getting rid of all of them and not acknowledging their presence. And, while Netanyahu may have been saying all of these things for 15, 20 years now, well, if I lived next to somebody who kept threatening my life, maybe after a decade or two, I'd be pretty sick and tired of it as well. But what they're saying here, that this guy is an ABC News consultant and former cybersecurity czar named Dick Clark. I know Dick Clark. But he says this is twice as large as any flood we've ever seen as far as these cyber attacks. And what they're saying now is that if this is 2 times bigger than the biggest attacks they've ever seen, I've heard other reports saying that it's 10 times as large. Wherever this is coming from, whether this is legitimately something from Iran, whether this is some sort of false flag by somebody behind the scenes trying to make it look like Iran, or whatever the case, it wakes me up to the fact that we are vulnerable to online banking. And I wonder if you think that this is a legitimate concern right now, Blake.
Yeah, I guess at some level it would be a concern if there was, if somebody could actually launch that sophisticated of an attack that could, damage our banking system. I'm not sure. I think I'm having that flashback of the end of Fight Club when they blow up all the credit card buildings and erase all the debt. That was a different type. That was a more direct attack, though. I don't know. I think a lot of that stuff is hype, but I really am not an expert in cybersecurity, so I can't really comment on that. I just find it, it's always Israel finding the perfect scapegoat. It's somebody like Lieberman who always, he has every reason to, I think, point his finger towards Iran. And it could be anything. I don't have any trust for these guys. I think any type of false flag, anything that goes wrong. And we know that Israel, committed an assassination against a nuclear scientist over in Iran, with all the stuff going on there. It seems like they really want to get to war, and anytime they got to blame Iran, I have to look at them too. So I think, if they want to blame Iran, I'm not saying Iran's innocent, but I'm saying I think Israel should be just as much. We should just scrutinize them just as much as Iran under any kind of false flag.
Well, I was reading this article a few minutes ago with Dan Johnson of Panda, and in this ABC News article, this woman, Stacey Briggs Gerlach, she said, hopefully it can be up soon, referring to, I believe this was Bank of America, and trying to get back online to get to her accounts, or maybe this was PNC. But she says, hopefully it can be up soon. Never realized how dependent I am on it. And that's where we're at. I think we are very vulnerable to being crippled if something like this were to occur. What this story further goes on to say is that a group of hackers calling themselves Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam warned the financial industry that it was going to attack in retaliation for the controversial film The Innocence of Muslims, which provoked outrage across the Muslim world earlier this month. The U.S. said it suspected that hackers in Iran were also involved. This is the first time that we know about where a Middle Eastern entity, perhaps a Middle Eastern government, has attacked websites, critical infrastructure in the United States, Clark said. Thoughts there?
I don't believe it. I don't think this innocence of Muslims is a terrible thing or whatever. But I don't believe it's putting people up in the big uproar that it says it is. I think that was a convenient excuse when it was pretty obvious that it was a coordinated attack, and it happened to be on exactly 9/11. I think that when the movie had been out for 6 months, but all of a sudden it was like that was the day they started freaking out. Just happened to be on September 11th. I'm not buying it. That's the excuse they like to use, but I don't think that's really behind it, and I don't think that would motivate a group of like these world-class hackers in Iran that just are some like at a level that's above anything that the NSA and the top levels of military intelligence just can't counter. They're just at a certain level beyond anything over in Iran. Just happen to be in Iran that just they're bound and determined to destroy our banking system. So what? We're going to have to do a preemptive strike on Iran so they don't do any more cyber attacks on our corrupt banking system? I don't really know. I don't think it's possible for that to actually happen. If I'm really do that much damage, I'm sure there'd be records somewhere, and there's all kinds of other types of hackers I would think that would be able to see some of this stuff coming. So I have a lot of reasons to be skeptical about that.
Now, skeptical about that, I guess
it's Iran.
Well, absolutely. It always made me uncomfortable to know that while nobody saw it coming on September 11th, and I'm watching live as planes are hitting buildings, and then I just remember so quickly we had mugshots and photos of it looked like a Brady Bunch screen of quote-unquote terrorists. Like, these are all the people that did this. Well, how the heck did you figure that out so quick? Really? How did you get their pictures? How did you get the graphic loaded up? Right. Instantly we know that this is Al-Qaeda. Instantly we know that this is the whole thing was very bizarre. It didn't make a lot of sense.
You're right. And without even getting into the whole conspiracy theory angle of 9/11, because there's certainly a lot of unanswered questions. They definitely need to do an independent investigation, and even if you don't believe that, at least it would shut up the conspiracy theorists if people want to see it that way. But without getting too much of the conspiracy theories, some people think that Netanyahu might have had a little something to do with those attacks, perhaps. Even getting into that level, I don't know. Like I said, I think he's a younger, more ambitious Dick Cheney, and
he's not that much younger.
He's ruthless.
He's not that much younger. While Dick Cheney might be Darth Vader,
Dick Cheney's he is Darth Vader. He's got no heart, and he's on the last legs. So.
No, but Netanyahu's an old man too. But I mean, this is all on the heels. This is all kind of like all these stories are connected to each other, like Velcro or a couple of blocks of Legos. This story coming out from Fox News saying top intelligence official is backtracking on Libya story, saying that their initial assessment was premature. And what they're saying is that top officials started last week calling this attack terrorism. Going through this story here, I had it pulled up. But they had been basically saying that this was... There we go. The White House has had to steadily backpedal over initial claims that the attack was inspired by protests in Cairo over an anti-Islam film and was not pre-planned. Top officials started last week calling the attack terrorism. So I'm trying to understand when they knew the day after this attack that it was terrorism, and they requested all the special forces to come in to treat it as terrorism, and Chris Stevens had been sending information and cables and wires and emails saying that their security wasn't up to speed and they'd been receiving threats and they needed things beefed up. Why is this administration continuing up until the past couple of days to keep blaming some movie? Like a movie gives you a free pass to go get violent. You mentioned Fight Club. Well, that doesn't mean we can go start a fight club. That doesn't mean I can go punch my neighbor. Whether there's an offensive movie or not, I can't watch something that Bill Maher did and then go set off a firebomb at my neighbor's house. That's ridiculous. So, I mean, what do you think's going on here in this administration? Because all this stuff is tied together. You got Israel, you got Iran, you got Libya, you got all of our foreign affairs, you got Team America, World Police, trying to be everything to everyone everywhere. How do you think this all connects together, Blick?
Well, I think you're right. They have something to hide. There was probably clearly something going on with Chris Stevens and like cables and wires and emails or whatever, and it's going to embarrass the administration because they didn't do anything when they had an opportunity to. So they've used this innocence of Muslims thing has just come up as that's like the whole center of everything. It's like their convenient excuse while they scramble and stonewall and try to come up with a new story. So that seems to be a lot with this administration, is stonewalling and no transparency and hiding stuff. So not par for the course.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break here. We'll come back on the other side. By the way, tell everybody about your radio show, because for everyone who has not, Blake has been on Agree to Disagree over here at thenewamericanmedia.com a couple of times in the past, and I've been on his program quite a bit. But if you've missed those initial interviews and radio shows where we have introduced each other, I reached out to Blake after checking out a YouTube video where he documented voter fraud by the Republican Mitt Romney campaign in Nevada as they were trying to disenfranchise Ron Paul and Ron Paul delegates. He caught it on video. It's all up there online, and we invited him onto the program a while ago. It turns out Blake is a radio host doing his own thing, so I said, sure, why don't I come on? And then we've kind of made it a regular thing where I'm co-hosting over there. So why don't you take a second, Blake, tell people, why you do what you do, where you do it, how they can find out more information, and just, make the pitch. Introduce yourself.
All right. Well, yes, I am Blake Walley, and I decided to start a blog a while ago, and it ended up developing into a radio show after a while. I like to cover the news, and I don't really get what I like on the TV so much, so I kind of started covering my own and doing a little outside the box, and I try to speak in common sense and sincerity and try to challenge people's critical thinking. Not really sure what to add. I guess I could say I try to wake people up, as they say, and help people get involved and see through the BS and maybe see something they haven't that they're not going to get on the regular mainstream news. So I guess that would be a quick summary. It's hard to describe. It's definitely out there, but I would love for people to go and check that out. And please check out my website to really see what I'm talking about, and that's at eccentricperspective.com.
Your Twitter profile is?
Eccentric99, so I'm running a decent news feed, so hopefully put me on a list or something like that. I'll make sure I try to get lots of good news highlights. I'm a big news junkie. I probably spend close to 30 hours a week doing news research, so I like to tweet out a lot of the interesting pieces of news I find in the day, some music, good stuff. So yeah, please follow me.
And
at Eccentric99.
And you can also check out Blake's radio program, Eccentric Perspective. That's Monday, Wednesday, Thursday from noon to 1:30 p.m. Pacific. That's over at freedomizerradio.com on many of the Mondays. Pretty much, I don't think I've missed a Monday in the past 3 months, Blake. We've been co-hosting over there. It's been a lot of fun.
Right.
It definitely fits into the schedule, and it's always good to the news cycle is constantly moving. So it's just like if we don't have the opportunity to speak and connect a few times a week, we're missing out. And that's why radio shows are important. YouTube is very important. And Twitter's vital, because as everything happens last second, last minute, instantaneous communication, that's why we really want everybody to be following us there, which is why...
And
yes,
podcasts. I was going to say, podcasts are kind of a new thing. I almost think of them as like a DVR for radio shows or something. You can pull up a radio show and listen to it whenever you have time or whenever it's convenient. You don't have to be at a specific time of the day like you would with regular terrestrial radio. So there's an advantage there, and people can go to iTunes and you can just type in Eccentric Perspective, and you can pull up the show and subscribe from right there. So
that is a very good point. That is a very good point, because like I said, we're on about 3 months now where we've been doing that. We need to find a way to really promote that, because it's a different format. We take a whole bunch of different calls over there. It's an hour-and-a-half show compared to 60 minutes over here, and I mean, we get into everything. I mean, we have a segment where we talk about music, lyrics, which I think is very important, whether it's Guns N' Roses or Muse or I don't know, what are some of the other ones we've talked about. I don't know if we've done Rage Against the Machine, But anyway,
a little bit, yeah.
Getting into
we've done a few. I can't remember exactly all of them either. Yeah, I do try to tweet some of these songs out as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's good stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, join us over
Excellent.
there. It's freedomizerradio.com, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon to 1:30 p.m. Pacific. Blake, when we get back on their side, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the ACLU. They're forcing our own government to reveal stats about how often they're spying on us, and this is shocking. You know, if anyone says that they trust this administration for another 4 years, I got something I want you to take a look at. We're going to take a quick station identification break here on the TNAM radio network here on Agree to Disagree. I'm Brian Engelman. Thanks for joining us today.
Follow the newamericanmedia.com on Twitter at American_media_.
You are watching The New American Media.